I just got top 8 at my regional with Tearlaments. Now for the list, you will notice I'm not playing Horus. I really tried to play Horus, and I just, for the life of me, I can't understand why people play it. Like, obviously, whenever Zombie Vampire goes off, it's crazy. I feel like the best player in the universe. But whenever it gets impermed, now again, when Horus resolves, it's amazing. It's also darks to fuse with, I understand. And surely I'm missing something because, you know, people are consistently topping YCSs with it. But whenever I play it, I feel like, what am I doing? Like, I go second into Pearly, the star gets spun, GG. I go second into Unchained, I activate Imsedi, you know, I go minus a billion. I play Sark, they go activate Escape, goodbye. Okay, guess I went minus a billion for nothing. The only deck in which you can actually activate Sark against and not feel god-awful is Rescue Ace. I don't know. I want my tier deck to actually go second as well. So you'll notice about my deck, I don't actually care about my going first that much because the going first of a tier deck is already an FTK. Your end boards cannot be broken, so you don't need to make them better. You need to make them just good enough and then play enough cards that let you go second as well. We have triple Rhino Heart. I think you need to max out on cards that are good mills and good draws, and I think Rhino Heart is one of the few cards like that. You'll notice almost all the tier cards really are like good mills and good draws. Also, whenever I mill Rhino Heart, I actually really like also normal summoning the second to then make Bahamut and go into Toad that way. That means you get to use one fusion on something else rather than a Mud Dragon, which always feels really bad. Of course, like making a Toad is great, but when you have to use one of your names for Mud, you kind of feel like meh. Whereas if you can just like normal summon this sometimes and boom, have a Toad on top of everything, that feels way better. Next, we have one of each name. Oh, I wish we got them back. Honestly, if you want to like make me happy, just ban all the Ishizu cards and put all of these to 2. That way we can play Tearlaments without it feeling as, you know, aggravating when they go, oh, Agito, oh, Kelbeck. Like, that shit sucks. So, you know, just put all of these to 2 and ban all the Ishizu. Then we have triple tier cash. This is a crazy card, and like not many people fully respect how crazy this is. Fenrir. I think this card is absolutely crazy. It might be like the best Yu-Gi-Oh card of last year, at least as a generic kind of card, you know. Of course, you can say, oh, Sprite Elf was crazier, Kid Kolos was crazier. Sure, but this card can be played in anything, and then some decks are the lucky fucks who also get to search Engine with it. So if you're like Manadium, you can search Scareclaw, and if you're Tier, you can search Tearlament Kushiro, which is fucking crazy. So this is like a board breaker, this is a board end piece, and it is also Engine. It's just wild to me. Also, this tends to unbrick hands with Kelbeck and Agito and Trivikarma in them, which is something not a lot of people seem to respect right now. Whenever you draw those shit cards, having free special summons that refund themselves, and then you can pair with like a normal summon to then get them out of your hand with Barricade Board Blocker, comes up so fucking often, it's not even funny. And you don't have to hard draw Horus cards then. You know, you just have bodies plus blocker getting it out of your hand, and then you just play on that way. And then going second, of course, I mean, I don't have to sell you in fucking Kashira Fenrir, right? Like, this card is crazy. Also, whenever Tier gets hand trapped, and they tend to have to get hand trapped like quite a bit for there to not be a board, to then still have a Fenrir on your board and maybe some random bodies turning into an SP, that's not a good board. But after your opponent hand looped themselves, that's a pretty solid board. And if that Fenrir then doesn't get outed, it searches you your follow-up. GG, no re. For a long time, I was testing between this and Horus. While they don't serve the same function, they do tend to fight for like the same few spots that the Tearlament deck tends to have. Fenrir just kept on winning because, like, yeah, going first, Horus will make your board bigger and it will play through hand traps better, but I think Tier does that pretty well already. While going second, Tier already has issues with, you know, having to deal with certain negates that stop you from milling, and if you don't start milling, the deck just does nothing, you know, the deck just falls apart. So Horus, I don't know, it's great when you draw Kelbeck or Agito, then I love him, Seti. So Fenrir out of the way here. Then I'm playing some dangers. I'm still looking for one more quarter century secret rare, but oh, look at that. What a beautiful card. What a beauty right here. Basically, because I don't play Horus, I do have to play some other darks. These are just aquas, you know, to get your aqua stuff rolling, and this is then a non-aqua, so this means you can make Mud Dragon with it. Why Jackalope? Because I know a lot of people are playing Mothman. Basically, I very often have hands of gas, you know, so you have like Fenrir, Pearl Rhino, Goods, Diviner, you know, those types of cards are already in your hand, and then you sit there with Mothman going, this is just gonna rot away in my hand, isn't it? And so whenever that happens, I feel so bad. I'm literally holding a brick. Whereas you can technically start playing and eventually the Jackalope will just be added onto your board and then, you know, either it will link off into a barricade board blocker or it will link off into an SP, or going second it'll make it dark and so forth. Like, this is a danger that doesn't suck ass when the rest of your hand is good, or also as a top deck, because that's another thing. If you have like one card left in your hand and then you top deck or something like that, suddenly you're like, oh, Mothman, cool, I have a 50-50 chance of fucking myself in the ass. Whereas Jackalope will at least always be a body. That's also the same thing with the Nessies, by the way, then, because like if you start playing and your last card in your hand is Nessie, you know that if the Nessie hits itself, it can then go get a Jackalope and then the Jackalope can get the other Nessie, assuming of course that you either didn't mill them or you shuffled them back with fusions after. But so these danger combinations are the only way to do that. At one point I was trying Chukinoko when I only had one Nessie in a deck, one Nessie, one Chukinoko, but then I felt like the level 3 does kind of suck. At least this Jackalope tends to lead to Nessie, which is a level 7, which is super great with the Strudo. And it's also an Aqua. So yeah, these dangers, very, very solid. Also helps you unbrick, of course. Like if you, for example, activate Sharon, they ash that, you're like, all right, that was a really solid starter, but I could still activate this danger and that could get the ball rolling again. So they are like unbrickers. They are also push through stuffers. And in worst case, if you can already play and maybe you drew like something like a droplet or a super poly, you just throw them away. You don't care. They are not that high value, but they are generically pretty fucking solid. Also check out these beautiful playmats at zerodamagegaming.com. You can use a code Solemn for a discount. A lot of dangers, you know. I started following competitive Yu-Gi-Oh again when these were out. I wasn't playing, you know, I probably started playing again last year around Master Duel is when I really got back into it. But I was following, you know, ever since like the danger piles and I just love these cards. Super glad that they can now be in a solid deck as well. Again, we were already a little bit spicy with the Jackalope. I am playing Beast King of the Swamp, and now it's not for the reason that you think. I know some people are playing Beast King because they want to do like Revolution Synchron stuff with it, and I'm like, nah. We're not trying to cope that hard, you know. I'm part of the cope gang, don't get me wrong, but that's a little too cope. The reason I'm playing Beast King of the Swamp instead of King of the Swamp is that I don't want to play Poly. While Poly is insane when it resolves, meaning like your Guardian Chimera, the whole push comes through, yeah, you auto win on the spot. Absolutely true. However, when you are playing into the best decks boards right now, you will notice that that poly will very rarely resolve, because into Rescue Ace, they have Extinguish to get rid of a body, they have Contain to make a body unfusable with, Pearly will spin away the bodies, and then Unchained will rage away the bodies, or escape away the bodies. So the best 3 decks right now actually remove bodies before you can poly with them, or they can respond to the poly to remove those bodies. Sure, when I go against garbage decks, Guardian Chimera ensures I'm OTKing, but against garbage decks, I'm already winning. It doesn't really matter. So if I'm then not playing poly, which is again a brick out of the deck, I'm again ensuring that I'm gonna brick less than normal tier, and I'm also gonna have more high value cards when going second. So then if I'm cutting poly, then what is the point of playing King of the Swamp? And another important thing, like I mentioned earlier when I was like normal summoning Rhino Heart to make Bahamut the hard way, you can do the exact same thing with Beast King of the Swamps at level 4. That comes up a lot, like a shit ton. I did that at the regional, I think 3 times or something, where I resolved the Sharon first and so forth, and I'm like, okay, my Rhino Heart came back from the grave, and I got this guy. Boom, put it onto the board, overlay, Bahamut Shark, Dote. Like, that is so sick. Of course, it's not constantly coming up, but it comes up a fair bit. Also, when you go second into the Rescue Ace board, if you are able to get a Mud Dragon off, there's a lot of people who go like, oh, then you just win the game. And like, I wish, but you don't have that many waters either. And if you want to turn the Mud Dragon into a dark, then suddenly all of your waters become targetable. And so like, while Mud Dragon, yeah, fucks them, it doesn't fully fuck them. However, what does fuck them is if you can then like normal summon Beast King and make the Bahamut play with the Mud Dragon not under the Bahamut. Like, I'm making Toad with a hard-drawn Beast King, and now if I then start linking stuff off, I already have an Omni Negate to deal with a bunch of stuff. I know it sounds like very specific, obviously. You need to already have milled a Rhino Heart, it has to come out, you have to not have used your normal summon, so you can normal summon this and you have to hard draw this. But like, that is one more argument, you know, beyond all the other arguments I've already given you. Now, when people see this, the bigger question might actually be, why aren't you playing Mali? I hate Mali with a burning passion. Don't get me wrong, Beatrice is insane, right? And if we ever get the Ishizu cards banned, I think we have to play Mali. But right now, when you go second into a board and you mill a Malicious and a tier name, you are making a Dangerous. That Dangerous is never resolving. Like, people say, oh, Diviner is so bad going second, and in the same breath go, oh yeah, I'll go second with Mali. I'm like, how? Your Dangerous will get Appaloosa. Your Dangerous will get popped. Your Dangerous will get spun. Your Dangerous will get impermed. Your Dangerous will never, ever, ever, ever resolve. So going second, your Mali is never, ever, ever making Beatrice. It can be used for link plays, sure, you know, you can do Dark and SP and so forth, like I get that. But in terms of like a fusion, tier names in that Mali build actually are meaningless. They are just empty bodies summoning nothing. The strongest thing you have is Kaleido Heart, but that's very specific. You need a tier name and a Rhino and an Aqua. And that's the only important fusion you can make. Because like Mud Dragon, yeah, into some decks pretty good, but it's not really pushing anything, you know? It's not OTKing, and it's not gonna be part of any type of board. However, if you play King of the Swamp or Hexial Fusion or this kind of stuff, every fucking fusion that happens is a real threat that has to be dealt with as you break the board. So like, I am going into a Rescue Ace board, and maybe I don't even have Mud Dragon access or whatever, but even with Mud Dragon access, Mud Dragon by itself isn't breaking the board. You're just insulating some waters from some traps. Like, that's meaningless. And even if you then call Dark midway through, then they can start popping off the waters that were still there. Like, it feels really shit. However, if you can like randomly add Grafa to that board, like, you are breaking Rescue Ace very consistently. Grafa by itself trades with the two traps, and that was just one tier name. So while Mali is, yes, a better board going first, like absolutely, obviously, like Beatrice with Toad, with Kalai, like all of that stuff, Beatrice is going to absolutely be a better board going first. Tier doesn't need a better board going first. We already put up FTKs, whether it's this board or the Beatrice board. No one's breaking that shit. If we do not get hand trapped into Oblivion, there is almost no card combination in the world that breaks the tier board. So we don't need it to be better. I need this deck to actually go second, because people say like, oh, tier breaks boards in engine. That's true. Not really either, right? You really remember the times where it broke boards in engine because it's so special and fancy. But when you go up against a good Rescue Ace player with a good Rescue Ace build, building a nice Rescue Ace board, or a good Unchained player, again, with a good build and so forth, or a good Pearly player and so forth, like proper builds, tier in engine is not reliably breaking those. And especially not when you're drawing Shyama, Malicious, Denier, and all this other garbage. And then when you finally are fusing, you somehow got your shit through. Now the best thing you put up is Dangerous getting negated. Sorry, I just don't buy it. So to me, King is necessary. Also a reason for only 2. I really do not want to brick on these. Again, like, there's so many bad draws in tier that people are just okay with, like Shyama, like Denier, like Malicious, like Beast. So many dog shit draws, and people are like, oh, I'll just draw them in combination with Horus and it'll fix itself. I'd rather not. So again, only 2, and you know, worst case, you can fuse with your Nessie, you can fuse Jackalope and so forth. Now, Shuttle Beast. This card is obviously a dog shit draw, and yes, 1 in 10 games you will randomly draw this and not feel great about it, but just the added ceiling of most games having 1 extra draw is really crazy. Yeah, it is just 1 draw, but like, you are going through most of your deck, most of your games, so you are +1 in all of those games. Yeah, 1 in 10 games you'll have drawn it, and you know, in a lot of those games you might even get this out of your hand with a Sharon, so then it's quite alright, right? Or you even danger it out of your hand, that happens as well. But then in all those other games where it gets milled, just a free +1, like, that's just too good. I played without it, I was like, I'm so sick of drawing this card, I don't want to play with it anymore. But once it's back in your deck and you just feel those random +1s, you're like, yeah, nah, we're not cutting this. Next, Destrudo. This is for Baron. I love making Baron. I even at one point played 2 Destrudo, and while it is definitely better to like get Toad plus Baron access more reliably, people aren't playing that many board breakers to where you need 2 Omnis all the time. I'll still try, you know, a lot of my boards still end that way, but if my board doesn't have a Baron for some reason, I won't cry about it either. Usually our boards are FTK enough, and introducing more bricks like Destrudo isn't really great. You notice I'm keeping the bricks to a very, very minimum. Most of these cards you see are gonna be good draws, and when they're not, it's very minimal. You know, you see my Beast King Shuttle Beast. A lot of people are playing fucking Shyamas and Deniers and all this garbage that's like, yeah, it increases your ceiling, but at what cost, you know? Same thing with like Happy and King Sark. I mean, people say King Sark is a good draw, but you're discarding so much to like get anything going. Then of course the Ishizu cards, these are crazy. Ban these. Just give me the tier cards back. You know, higher tier cards, a nice consistent deck. Get rid of this fucking garbage. Then we have 2 Diviners. So this is me not playing Horrors and instead going, oh, so I can go -3 from my hand to get impermed, or I can just normal summon to get impermed. I kind of know what I'm choosing. Of course, Horus is crazy whenever it resolves, but this is also crazy whenever it resolves. The way I see it, Tear has like multiple pushes. Like your Pearl Rhino into Sharon is a push, your Fenrir into Tear Cash is a push, your Scream is a push, and then your Diviner is a push. And the more of these cards you have in your hand, the more hand traps you can play through. Like you can say, oh, but it got hand trapped, but it's like, yeah, but every time this gets ashed, my Sharon doesn't get ashed. And Horus does the same thing, don't get me wrong, that's also a push, a very good push, but it's a push that minus you a billion. Then we have Primeval, Planet, Pearl Rhino, of course, the field spell. I'm not playing Terraforming, and that's because a lot of people are on Droll right now. For the life of me, I do not understand why. Droll sometimes is just hand looping yourself against Rescue Ace. Droll is almost always hand looping yourself against Unchained. It is very often hand looping yourself against Pearly. It hurts Tear. Very often the board is still so big that you're still not breaking it, especially after hand looping yourself. So it's like, what are you drolling? Only Vanadium? Possibly, I guess, but like, yeah. But so I'm still playing around it by not playing the Terraforming. And Goods is honestly the same thing. I do not understand people playing like 1 or 0 Goods and Terraforming. You're playing Trivic Karma. This card is Terraforming that also plays around Droll. If you open like a combination of this, or a combination of this and Fenrir, you can go like Goods, send Trivic Karma, then activate your other search. If they droll you there, you chain Trivic Karma and add like Scream or a trap instead. So you can literally play around Droll with this, whereas Terraforming is always playing into Droll. It's wacko world out here. I don't understand why the fuck you would ever play like low copies of this. So 2, you might have noticed a lot of cards in my deck are 2-offs. I also named this deck like a few days ago like 2-2-2-2-2-2 because Tear can basically not afford to brick on doubles. And I know the math is like really low. Like, oh, the odds of drawing 2 of a 3-off is only 3.6% in a 40 card deck with a 5 card hand. Something along those lines, you know, people will talk. And that's true, but that's true for every single 3-off. So all your Pearl Rhinos, all your Fenrirs, all your Rhino Hearts, every single 3-off is a 3.6% chance of breaking on doubles. So if you then start going, I want to see Goods all the time, because I do, I want to see this other card all the time, I want to see this other card all the time. After a while, you're bricking on doubles very often because you have so many of those 3.6% chances stacking on top of each other. So I wanted to minimize that. And so anything that I do not consider a broken starter, like Pearl Rhino, like Fenrir, Rhino Heart, is on lower count. Still, Goods is insane, and it's just a better Terraforming. Like, Terraforming should not be in tier lists until this card is at 2 or 3. Just know. This is every other tier card and Pearl Rhino, thanks to Trivic Karma. I will admit that Horus is good, but I will never admit that Terraforming is better than Foolish Burial Goods. It just isn't. The only argument is if you're playing like 3 of this, you'll brick more often on 2 of them, whereas if you go like 2 and 1 Terraforming, sure, I'll give you that. But I won't give you like 1 Goods, 1 Terraforming, or 0 Goods, 1 Terraforming. That's just no. Unless you're playing Raid Salt. That's a different story. Then we have Foolish Burial, because it sends anything in the world. It's crazy. 2 Scream and 1 Grief. The reason for 2 Scream is that we're playing the Diviner, and so every time you have to normal summon Diviner, Scream has the potential of being a brick. Now, of course, if you have like Fenrir, then it's fixed, because Fenrir plus Diviner, if you know, Diviner got hand trapped or something, will always make SP, and then you can summon Tear Cash together with Scream. So like that's why, again, Fenrir is a much better draw than Scream here, purely because of Diviner. Like if you are playing no Diviner, I think you should be maxing out on Scream, because that means your normal summon is almost always going to be a tier monster. Yeah, Scream is crazy though, don't get me wrong. It's a very, very good card. I'm always happy when it's on my board. But again, because I'm already playing 2 Goods, anytime I open Pearl Rhino, the Goods is getting me the Scream as well. And then Grief. Grief is to play around Droll. Again, a lot of people are coping on Droll, and so I will always Tear Cash, banish traps to then be able to like Kaleido the Grief from deck in order to add the trap, and that way even under Droll you have trap access. Then I have 2 Droplets, again 2. Sometimes, but not all the time. There's probably an argument that I should be playing 3 of this. I need to see Engine. I need to see those combinations of those pushes to not die against hand traps. So it's 2 instead. I need this deck at 40, you know, like 41, it's cute and all, but every single time you mill your 41st card, know that you could have instead milled the next one. So like, nah, we're staying at 40. And Droplet, yeah, I mean, mean, it's generically solid. You know, people say Droplet is mid this format, and I agree. It's not great against any particular deck, but it is solid against everything. Against Rescue Ace, if they blind Dweller us because you're further into the tournament or something, okay, here's a Droplet. GG, I'm breaking the rest of the board for free. Against Unchained, this trades with Caesar, and if they have Rage and Caesar, you can do both. Unless you know that they still have Escape that they can like remake the Rage, sure, but in general, you're at least, you know, getting rid of that threat. Against Pearly, once Noir spins for the first time, you Droplet them and GG, you know, that whole threat is gone. Droplet is just this decent into everything, like even into Lab. You can just go like, oh, you're activating Lovely and maybe they're gonna hand rip something important, just go like, okay, Droplet, get fucked. Against Lady as well, you can just Droplet and then Lady will not be able to get DDG, which is also like a big issue for this deck. So for that reason, Droplet, just generically really solid. Also deals with most Centurion Calamity locks, which is actually my loss in the regional. That's how I lost. Game 1, I got Calamity locked, and then Game 2, I had a very weak tier board, and they had like Imperm, Fenrir, and Engine, which was enough because, you know, just the weak boards happen. I know it's rare, this is the best deck in the universe, but sometimes you have a weak board. That game, I also, to be honest, do not know Centurion very well yet. I really need to test that before Bologna. But so this deals with that as well. Just it deals with everything a little bit. It's not insane, it's not great. If your deck has room for like 15 main deck non-engine, you don't need this shit. But if you are a tier player where your fucking non-engine needs to hit everything, this has been a godsend. I've seen people play like Nip and Super Poly, and those are cool cards. Super Poly is very good into Rescue Ace. It's dog shit into Pearly, unless they make the SP Noir board, in which case GG. Fine into Unchained, assuming that they start playing and that then the attributes start matching up. But again, I don't want to wait for that. I want to just deal with the Caesar so I can start playing. So Nip Super Poly is something I see people play, and again, like, I feel like against the very best decks, it's just not hitting reliably enough, whereas this is just always gonna hit. And then game 2 and 3, that's when I side in the stuff that hits hard. That's when the Super Polys and the Nibs come in, because then I can actually target stuff. Imagine drawing Nib against Pearly, GG. Imagine drawing Nib against Labyrinth, GG. There's just too many matchups where these cards are dead. Now, of course, maybe it's better in Horus, because then you can discard them, but that assumes you're drawing the Horus card, which is another issue with the Horus deck. Whenever you're not drawing the Horus cards, everything but Imseti is just a dog shit mill. And even Imseti is like a mid mill, because like my Shuttle Beast is a much better mill, but a way worse draw. But yeah, 2 Droplets, could be 3. There's definitely an argument. Now, for the traps, I'm playing 2 Solic and 1 Meta Noise. Again, I want to respect Droll, but also this is a different kind of plus. So again, there's going to be a bunch of games where you're milling both and then you're adding back, and you really feel that add back. That really lets you push through stuff more easily. But yeah, mostly Droll. Droll is the big issue. Like being able to use Grief and Meta Noise when you get Drolled makes it so you can actually build those full boards reliably. And then we have the Trivic Karma, of course. This is like the most annoying brick, because it's like one of those bricks where you have to play it. I tried so many builds without it, and just every time I'm like, nah, I can't. So that's the main deck, clean 40. I know this video has been going on for a while. I dislike deck profiles where they just give no information. Like, you know, you can just look up Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro deck and just look at the list that way. Why would you look at a deck profile? So I'm playing 1 Dark. Oh, instead of Starlight, baby. What a pretty boy. 1 SP Little Knight, 1 Sprint, and then 1 Barricade Borg blocker. I do not understand why the fuck people aren't on this card. Like, you have 3 bombs in your deck that you can draw, but that are dog shit as draws. It's Kelbeck, Agido, and Trivic Karma. Now, you could say, oh, I don't play blocker because I have Horus. How many times are you gonna draw the full Horus engine? Like, too often, you're gonna brick on this dog shit card and then not get it out of your hand, and you can barely play, and you get hand trapped, and it's just over. Whereas if you can just link your bodies into blocker and then discard the dog shit, you know, have your bombs go off that way, whether it's Kelbeck, Agido, or Trivic Karma, and then at the end of the turn, blocker goes, sorry for your trouble, have back follow-up. Like, it can either add Pearl or Rhino, just as follow-up for next turn, or it can add Scream, meaning when one of your mills in your opponent's turn mills Rhino Heart, you now have a discard for Rhino Heart to bring it back and always have on-demand fusing. So then, you're suddenly playing 6 Tearlaments names instead of 3 Tearlaments names, because you now always have the discard for Rhino. This card is fucking cracked. Now, of course, you're not gonna go out of your way to minus with this just to add a Scream back, but every time you send Trivic Karma, Kelbeck, or Aikido and you unbrick yourself with blocker, you're like, fuck yeah, now I also get a little bonus. So this is a must. I tried without it. Whenever I'm not playing it, I'm like, holy shit. I feel like I'm playing Tearlaments that went through another ban list, and there's a bunch of people playing tier like this on purpose. It blows my mind. I think a lot of people find tier Casino precisely because they like don't play the ways to unbrick themselves, and they add a billion bricks because it's fancy when the plays go off. But like, tier can be very consistent. It's just that you have to choose to play it that way and build it that way. And I have 1 Baron, again for the Strudo, and also with Diviner you can make it. Then we have Garura, decent to make with Nessie, especially going second into boards, you know, when you make a Dark or like an SP, and then you get to draw a card of that as well. But of course, also it's in here for Super Poly. If it wasn't for Super Poly, I actually wouldn't be playing this card. Then we have Mud Dragon. Oh, the boy, the pretty one. Very cool. Of course, really crazy into the Rescue Ace matchup, but also just making it for Bahamut Toad lines, and then of course Super Poly. This I would play even without Super Poly. Then Dragos Tapelia. I considered cutting this card a few times for Typhon, but like it does come up too often where you have like a dead Mud Dragon or a dead Garura in your graveyard, or sometimes even you use your Rule Colors, like your board wasn't quite FTK style, and now you need to use like your extra fusion, like you kept a Sharon on board, for example, with Rule Colors. It summon negate, you send Sharon, and then you turn the Rule Colors into a Stapelia, and now you have one more interrupt out of that. You know, that comes up too often for this to be cut, but it's definitely like the weaker chain of the whole bunch. Then we have Kaleido, obviously, crazy card, and then the two King of the Swamp cards. Many times I was like, oh, Grapha isn't good enough, I cut it, and then I start playing and I'm like, holy shit, if I made Grapha here, it would be so much better. And then I do, and I'm much, much happier. Also, the weird weak boards where you're ending on mostly Tier Engine and like a Redoer, you are very happy that when your opponent says battle phase, you can go, okay, Redoer, make Grapha. Nice, you wasted your battle phase. There's also often the fusion that you make in your opponent's turn, like they're attempting to break the board, and as they notice, holy shit, I can't, then you go like, huh, here's Grapha. That's usually when they should be scooping, but many people don't, and then they go into time, which is not cool. I hate time rules. So then we have Abyss Dweller for the mirror, but also because I'm expecting some people to try out Fire Kings to catch people off guard. I think Fire Kings is actually pretty solid, pretty underrated, but you know, not tier or Unchained levels, but still pretty solid. And so when I mill them, I want to be able to go like, oh, Karunix? Cool. Anyway, here's Dweller. So I want to be able to make that against them, and of course the mirror, and of course Unchained. You know, that's the crazy thing about the Ishizu cards as well. Like game one, you mill your opponent, you notice, oh, you're on that kind of deck. This is gonna fuck you, isn't it? That's really nice. Now we have Bahamut and Toad. This comes up a lot. It's also like, this is follow-up and an interrupt. Crazy. And then finally we have Time Thief Redoer, and of course also the fancy. Wait, you can't see it? Yeah, there we go. What a cool card. I've noticed some people in the Tearlaments Discord want to cut this card, and I understand why, because it doesn't come up that often, but there's a lot of games that when it comes up, it single-handedly won that game, and you couldn't have won it without him. So he still needs to be in, especially when you get like hand trap, or you have like really bad mills. You play like the Tearlaments only type of gameplay, where it's like a Redoer, a Scream, maybe a Kaleido or a Rule Colors, like those types of small board. That's when Redoer really shines. And yeah, that's the extra. So for the side deck, first off, we have Volcanic Scattershot. I hate this shit. I did it once at the regional, sadly. It's sadly part of the game right now, but I fucking hate it. Like, it should just not be a part of Yu-Gi-Oh! And also, very often, when it happens to me, I'm like, even if they made another type of board, I would have broken that board in Engine. And then other times, when I have to do it, I'm like, when I had made another board, an FTK style tier board, they couldn't have broken it, even with non-engine. So it never feels good. When you lose to it, you feel scammed. And when you win with it, you feel scamming, because a normal board would have won anyway, because tier is the best deck in the universe. Fix it, Konami, please. Then we have 2 Tikaboo. Now you might say 2, what the fuck? Yeah, I don't have side space. As you notice, there's no non-engine in my main, except for 2 Droplet. So going first, I take out the 2 Droplet for the 2 Tikaboo. The reason for Tikaboo is this hits the shifter decks the hardest. It was between this and Skill Drain, and I made it in a spreadsheet, and I checked out, okay, which floodgates fuck the shifter decks the hardest? Is it Skill Drain or Tikaboo? Skill Drain or Tikaboo? Relatively reliably, Tikaboo was better, so that's why I went for Tikaboo. So you put these in, and together with Book of Eclipse or Super Poly, depending on which shifter deck it is, and then if they shifter you, maybe you can answer it with this. If they hand trap you in another way, like maybe like weird combinations like Droll, Ash, Imperm, or like Imperm, Bestial, or something crazy like that, then being able to go, oh, you tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, here's Tikaboo. So those situations, Tikaboo is really, really nice to kind of like even the playing field when random bullshit happens. I will say though, for the regional, I never flipped it. It is pretty good into the current field right now. And again, just side pattern-wise, it's really easy. You have 2 Droplet, here's 2 Tikaboo. That's it. Then I'm playing the 3rd Droplet, again for the matchups where it is really good. I will put it in. Then I'm playing the 3 Nib. This Nib basically fucks all the decks that make Dweller right now. Oh, this is also an interesting one. A lot of people are playing the Mali build, right? When the Mali build tries to make their board, after siding, they're gonna want to Dweller me. Now, those Mali builds can barely ever play around Nib. Like, it just struggles so hard. Like, at best, they get a Sharon summon after the Nib. It's very rare that they get Toad first. And so, I'm like, sure, this is gonna, you know, work against Dweller probably, but this is really gonna work against Dweller. The tier decks without Rule Colors, like, yeah, good luck. I don't know what else to say. Good luck. Better luck next time, buddy. That's another reason I really like Beast King, because so many people are on hand traps now. So many people are on Nib. You're like just constantly praying. Please don't Imperm Zombie Vampire. Please don't Ash Zombie Vampire. Please don't Ash Imseti. Please don't Nib me too early. Please, 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 please. I don't want to please. I want to just put up a rule close and say fuck your Nib. Also against Rescue Ace, whenever they do the Dweller board, here's a Nib. That's mostly what it's in here for. I will also side in against Vanadium, even though they can sometimes play through it, because like Vanadium is one of the few decks whose board you don't reliably break in engine. Then we have triple Super Poly. This card is mostly for shit decks. Like honestly, I do not side this in versus all the real decks, because the real decks play straight around it. Like people are saying Super Poly is great this format. I don't understand. Pearly against Tier ends on Noir and Ensemble Robin. If they aren't, I don't fucking know. But like Ensemble Robin Noir is the best board versus Tier. That is not Super Polyable. And people who go like, oh, I'll summon the Dark and then Super Poly, like bro, that's not happening. Let's be fucking real for a second. That's not happening. That is too many ifs. This card is not good against Pearl. Then against Unchained, again, you need to start playing into the board before it really outs anything. And if you do that, then Caesar already has done negates. He already did the damage, and now you're going -2 from hand to then get one pathetic body on board. Like it's not real. It's not working. Then into Rescue Ace, again, they should be ending on Dweller, because if they aren't, we'll break that garbage in engine. So Super Poly shouldn't be going into that deck either, because we should be nibbing them. Or worst case Droplet, but I don't really like Droplet into Rescue Ace either. But so that means against the best deck, Super Poly does fucking nothing. And so I still play it because it's actually all the other decks Super Poly nukes. Exo Sister. Bye. Labyrinth is also really good. That's actually the one top deck that Super Poly actually hits. Vanadium will post-side play around it if they're good. Like they will end on like Chen Ying, Baron, SP or something like that. Yeah, nice Super Poly bozo. But like then you need to play the Guilty, Gear Freed, whatever the fuck. And even that they could play around if they wanted to. That SP could be something else. And I don't want to play that Guilty, whatever the fuck, because like I don't have room. So yeah, Super Poly, it's insane into like everything but the best deck. So I still gotta play it. I'll still play that easy equalizer, but it's a little overrated right now. Then I got 2 Book of Eclipse. This is for Pearly and Unchained. I know that sounds crazy, but basically on Unchained, if this trades with Caesar, that's good enough. Like I would already play Imperm to trade with Caesar. Book of Eclipse is dad. That just also happens to work against Pearly. And again, we're working with limited space. So against Pearly, I will side in 2 Eclipse and then the Droplet, and I have 5 cards that deal with a Noir, and I can break the rest in engine pretty reliable. If they then have summon limit and I don't have the Fenrir for it, alright, it wasn't meant to be. So Eclipse. I also think a lot of people aren't respecting Pearly right now, and Pearly is actually really scary. And then finally, another cringe card. I'm playing Triple Dogwood. Now I will say this card never resolved today, but people just do not know when to fucking scoop. If we put up the FTK board, there's almost nothing you're gonna do to break it. Like it's just not happening. You can hope that the Tier player misplays, but like good luck. And Tier grinds so well. We can break virtually any board, but it's gonna take time, and people just like don't wanna accept their defeat. They think they can top deck out of Tier grinds. Like it just doesn't fucking happen. And then yeah, then this sad fuck goes in. But again, it hasn't come up this event. That's just a theory. But of course, the most important part is that it's also a level 3 tuner. Really awesome to make Baron with Fenrir and Tier cash. So that was my top 8 Tier deck. I hope you found this very interesting. Again, you can go to zerodamagegaming.com for your own beautiful playmat. Alright, that was all. Hope you found this interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.